If you don't do it, how are you gonna find it? Seriously. Howdy everybody, welcome back to Sunday Coffee, Guitars and Tones. This is the show where we grab our favorite cup of coffee, hang out and just talk about gear and music and all that good stuff. Okay, first thing, like last week somebody commented, hey, there's no playing on the video. There's no playing on this video, dude. If you're that dude who clicked because they're expecting to see playing, that's on Tuesdays and Thursdays. It's not on Sundays. Sunday is a leisure day. Yeah, leisure. It's for leisure. It's just a hangout. So this is a talk show, just in case you're tuning in expecting me to go on my fretboard. Like I said, that's on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Today's my day off. Kinda, sorta. Anyways, just to let you guys know. It's a beautiful day here in sunny Brighton today. We've got sunshine. It's warm. It's just lovely. We needed some sunshine because, you know what, it was a really cold and wet and absolutely miserable start to the year. We literally had 2 months worth of rain, so the sunshine is so welcome. All right, next thing, because we are going to talk about in a second. But I wanted to say a huge thank you and an outpouring of love from me to all of you, because I have finally reached 30,000 subs on YouTube. Yay! Oh man, you know, I have been working towards this for a while, and as you've probably seen, this year I am working my butt off to grow the channel, and I'm going to continue to do that because I enjoy what I do, and I wanted to come on and say thank you so much to everybody who's subscribed, who tunes in, who watches the videos, who gives it a like, who comments, who hypes the video, all of that good stuff, buys my preset packs, my Fractal stuff and all of that. You know what, I so appreciate it, and that's why I keep turning up every single week, 3 times. Yes, 3 times now. This is Sunday. This is the talk show today. Remember? Yeah, we just had that conversation. Anyways, cheers to you guys. Thank you so much. Here's to the next 30,000. Let's get it to like 60,000, dude. Yeah, let's do it. You know, I'm going to shoot for the stars because, like I said, I have a blast doing this, and I'm just going to continue doing it because, hey, music's my life. This is what I do. I'm a professional musician, and this is part of what I do. Alrighty, so we are here today to talk about our very beloved Eddie. Yeah! Because, I'm going to drop everything in a second. That's why. Because I have a coffee in my hand. Let me have a sip. Actually, I've got a coffee story before we get on to Eddie. So we have a place called Trading Post in Brighton. It's a coffee shop. And they actually have really good food there as well. But the coffee there's excellent. Now, if you've tuned in regularly, you know that I drink decaf, and I have been searching for a really good decaf. Anyways, we were there a few days ago, and I saw some decaf coffee pods there. So I grabbed them, and they have been absolutely amazing. So if you are in the Brighton area, go to Trading Post, have a regular coffee if you want. If you do the caffeinated thing, I can't because of health reasons, just to let you know. But the decaf stuff is incredible as well. So in my mocha today, decaf, yeah, Trading Post decaf coffee. Anyways, I haven't spoken about coffee for a while, so I thought I'd mention it. All right, let's get on to Ed. Yeah, which is why I have Frankenstrat here. So this week, I'm just going to have a sip and actually put this down for a second so I can hold these records. So this week, I did another episode of Decoding EVH. That is so much fun to do. And look, now every time I post a new episode of Decoding EVH, you can guarantee there's going to be a couple people who say, why are you chasing that tone? Why don't you just have your own tone? Just chase your own tone, find your own tone, find your own playing, do your own thing. You know what? Yeah, I'll let you into a little secret. Shh, don't tell anyone, right? Shh. I have my own tone. I've already found my own tone, dude. Honestly have. I have my own playing style. I'm really comfortable with the way I play and write music, and the tone I have on guitar and through my amps, through my Fractal stuff. It's my signature thing. I gravitate towards something. But it doesn't stop me from actually kind of like exploring. Now, this is why I actually started decoding EVH, because you know what? It's fun to chase the brown sound, and that's not actually what I'm doing, because I've already chased that and I've come really close to getting the brown sound anyways from my gear and stuff. So I'm not actually trying to nail a brown sound at all. But I'm really, really fascinated and interested in all the little components, all the myths and the legends about how Eddie got the tone, which is why I do it. It is experimentation. And, you know, delving into all of these little things actually has given me so much knowledge about tone and sound, and it has helped me, not just now, but over the years, to actually dial my tone in to absolute perfection, my perfection. Not everyone else's perfection. That doesn't matter, because, you know, everyone else's tone is their tone. My tone? I know my tone. I know when I plug into an amp how I'm going to dial it in and what I'm going to do in order to get it to sound like me. And, you know, whether I'm plugged into my Marshall DSL or my PRS amps or one of the other amps which are here, you know, EVH 5150s, etc., etc., you know, I always gravitate towards a certain sound and tone. And, you know, I'm comfortable in that. I have absolutely no problem. But you know what? Experimentation is a necessity, I think. And I also think it's absolutely in the spirit of Eddie. Think about this. How did he actually come across all these things like the Variac, pulling tubes from the amp, his signal chain, using long cables? How did he do that? He experimented. He basically plugged stuff in, he turned knobs, and, you know, he did things which nobody had done before, or he'd heard somebody had done and it sounded cool or something, just to see what would happen. That is absolute gold, because it gives you so much knowledge, it gives you so much experience. And it has given me so much satisfaction, happiness, and experience in tone as well. You know, something interesting happened this week. This week was actually about his signal chain, whether his pedals actually made a difference to the signal chain. All right, spoiler alert, if you haven't seen that episode, well, firstly, go and watch it. Yeah, self-plug. Why not? It's my show, right? But anyways, it was about the signal chain. And I have a couple of vintage pedals. These are like, you know, from the 1970s. Yeah, this is a 1970s Phase 90. Yeah, MXR script logo. This is the OG, man. And I have a flanger as well. Yep, this is 1977. Yep, I got the real gear, dude. But something really interesting happened, right? So I'm thinking, yeah, I'll plug these in and it affects a signal chain and it's going to be really cool and wow, it's going to be like amazing and stuff. And I plug these in and you know what? Their tone sucks. They suck tone. They sound absolutely amazing when you switch them on and you're using kind of the phase or the flanger, right? But they were actually rolling off so much of the high end. It made sense in terms of like if you're plugged into a 100-watt Marshall, which is really kind of ice picky and kind of, yeah, makes that noise, right? It makes sense that these things actually rolled off some of the high end, as did, you know, the long cable, etc., etc. But I was listening to it and I was thinking, I put this on a looper pedal, you know, a loop switcher, because I do not want this in my signal chain all the time. In fact, my favorite tone was actually me just plugged into my amp, my 50-watt custom Plexi. Yeah. I loved the sound of these pedals, but I didn't like what it did to the tone of the amp, you know? And I was kind of, you know, doing the sound clips and I was thinking, I wouldn't use it like this. You know, Ed did, but I wouldn't do it because that's not my tone. You know, it's not the thing that I gravitate towards. So the only way I could have ever found that out is by experimenting. So now I know, you know, I'm even more sure about what my tone is as a guitar player, because I actually went down that rabbit hole. I discovered what these things actually do. And that's the thing. That's the spirit of it. You know, there were probably a million times when Eddie tried something and it didn't work. It just didn't. It sucked. And we didn't get to hear about it because, you know, we didn't have like social media and all of that and kind of YouTube and things back in those days, right? Eddie was just doing it because, hey, he could. He needed a sound. And, you know, there wasn't kind of YouTube to kind of, you know, distract you and like Facebook and Instagram and things. He wasn't sitting there scrolling. He needed something to do. So he played guitar and then he did things like modified his amps and pulled tubes from his amps to see if he'll make it quieter and used a Variac and all sorts of weird things like that. And he found out. And honestly, there must have been a million times when he did things like change a pickup in a guitar and kind of played it and thought, this sucks. Nobody's ever going to hear this. And we never get to hear about it, right? Because it's all part of, you know, history. But he managed to refine his tone as a result of that. So that's the spirit of it. That's why I do it. And, you know, for years I have done this over and over and over again. I still continue to do it, you know, and it has taught me so much. I've done all sorts of kind of little hacks. Like my first album, right? Let me have a sip and then I'll tell you the story. So my first album, Strange Day. I'll put these down. How I recorded that album was with just a bunch of like gear that I had at the time. So I didn't have a lot of money back in the day, right? So I would just get whatever pieces of gear I could afford and stuff. So I got myself a Pod 2.0, Line 6 Pod 2.0, which was the in thing at the time. It was the early 2000s, I think. And that was fantastic, but it wasn't a tube amp. Now, I didn't want to spend the money on a tube amp. So I got myself a Soldano GTO pedal, supercharged GTO pedal, right? Yeah. A tube preamp. And I used to put that into the Pod 2.0 on a clean sound, right? And use the cab simulation from the pod. Not just that, but to boost it, I used to use a Boss DS1 in front of the supercharger pedal. Recorded my first album, Strange Day, entirely like that. There was just one or two songs which I actually added. It was a TC Electronics G major on that album. So, yeah, I hacked something together. It gave me a great sound at the time. Well, I thought it was anyways. I still listen to it now and then, you know, once in a while kind of thing. And it was a really good tone. How did I arrive at it? I experimented. You know, I had time on my hands and it was like, all right, what can I do to make this sound even better? All right, let's see if I can get a GTO pedal or something. You know, I think I got that. I do remember I got that from Chandler Guitars in Kew Gardens. And I must have just been browsing one day and they had it there and it was about $200 or something at the time. So I bought it and it was a great pedal. It was obviously front end of an SLO or the preamp section of it with the tubes in it and stuff like that. And it sounded fantastic, but I needed more, so I added the Boss DS1. Why did I add the Boss DS1 instead of an SD one? I think it was, you know, I saw Steve Vai was using one, so I was like, hey, yeah, I'll use one of those. Chuck it in front. Yeah, how does that sound? Yeah, that's great. It's all in the spirit of experimentation. Yeah, if I can say that properly. But like I said, it gave me so much knowledge and it keeps giving me knowledge over and over and over again. So next time you watch an episode of Decoding EVH, keep that in mind. That we do these things in order to widen our knowledge, to become just much more knowledgeable and dive deeper into what creates a great guitar tone so that we have the tools to then find our sound and the gear that works for us. You know, going back to the whole Van Halen thing, one of the reasons I'm not chasing the brown sound is, as much as I love the sound of the Plexi, right? And I adore the sound of my custom 50 watt, right? My favorite amp in the studio, probably my EVH 5150. Yeah, the 50 watt one, which is back there. Does it sound like a Plexi or vintage Van Halen? No, it don't. One of my other favorite sounds is the Marshall DSL 50 that I have, which I bought that for like 230 bucks. Yeah, 230 pounds in the UK. I think about 4 years ago, whenever it was, right? That's going to be updated soon. It's going to be modified and restored and all sorts of stuff. So stay tuned for that. But I love the sound of that amp. That is an incredibly cool amp. But I like it even better with my custom OD1 pedal in front of it. That's my sound. That combination is just absolute magic for me. Yep. My SLO30, my custom SLO30. Adore the sound of that. So you can see where this is going, right? And as much as I love Eddie's tone on that first album, and I want to understand where it all came from, what all the elements contributed to the overall sound that he had, I'm not trying to basically nail that tone for myself. Yeah, I find it interesting to do because I'm just a curious person. I like to delve into these things. I have a bit of OCD about it. What can I say? That's just me. So, you know what? I want to say thank you to Eddie for actually teaching us that, to experiment, to deep dive down these rabbit holes, to find ourselves within that. And you know what? This is something to keep in mind. The only way that Eddie arrived at being Eddie was by doing all of this stuff. Yeah. Yep. By experimenting on guitar, experimenting with his gear. That's how he arrived at his own tone. And that's how I arrived at my own tone and my own sound and my own thing. You know, I don't write like Eddie. But that's okay. Because I know that I write like me, and that excites me. So, some food for thought, or some coffee for thought. See what I did there? Yeah, on this lovely, lovely Sunday. So, next time you plug in, experiment a little bit. Why don't we do it more often? You know, it's almost like we're encouraged not to do it. It's like, no, just turn the gear on. Don't do anything else. Just play what's there. Find your own sound. Find your own. How do you find your own sound if you don't do it? Explain to me. Somebody explain to me in the comments. Yeah, explain to me how exactly you find your own sound, right? If you don't experiment. If you don't do it, how are you going to find it? Seriously. Where are you going to look? Into the void? Let me give you a little bit of insight. That ain't going to work. Anybody who just sits there and thinks, oh, I'm going to find my own sound, I'm just going to sit here and contemplate, and yeah, it's going to come to... No, get on guitar, start playing, you know, play like the songs by your favorite artists and stuff, and find your own mojo within that. That's where it's at. That's why we learn other people's music, our favorite musicians' music. It's because we find inspiration in that. And while we're trying to play this stuff, we hear a little bit of ourselves, and it's like, oh, cool, I really like that. I'm going to continue to do that. You know, the number of licks and riffs and stuff that I keep repeating, and I see this in my solos all the time and my rhythm playing as well, right? It's a Jay Palmer signature move. I don't hear this guy do it or that guy do it, or, you know, I never heard Eddie do it. I never heard Andy Timmons do it. Never heard Nuno do it. Never heard, you know, Warren DeMartini do it. Never heard Jakey Lee do it, or any other guy. Because, hey, it came from in here, in me, and that's part of me. And I'm totally comfortable with that. This has been fun. All right, I'm just seeing that it's, I've been talking for about 20 minutes. So I will wish you a lovely, lovely Sunday. Get out there and get into the sunshine if if the day's absolutely amazing, like it is here in Brighton. I'm going to go out and kind of just spend some time in the warmth and stuff. And thank you so much for tuning in. And again, huge thanks to all of you for the 30K. I so appreciate it. I so appreciate you guys tuning in today as well. Have a lovely day. Enjoy your coffees. Cheers to you guys. And I'll see you really soon with another one. Have a great day. Bye for now.